Well, since you guys love the first one so much, we're back with our second ever Panda movie review. This time for a short film, a very divisive and recently released short film called Sweet Revenge. It is the first movie, well, short film, but the first movie officially in the Friday the 13th franchise in 16 years, if you count the remake. For an original film, over 20 years since we've had a Friday the 13th film, which is crazy because even back in the 80s, they were pumping these out like once a year for a little while there, which is insane because this is before everything was digital. So that had to be like cut film and printed and things like that. That is an insane pace for that kind of stuff.
It was
So I
like
think
the
before we get
Duggars. It was like the Duggars were making movies.
before we get started, what's your level of familiarity or fandom with Friday the 13th and the whole universe around that?
On a Panda scale of 1 to 5, it would be a 3.
Okay. That's higher than I guessed for some reason. I thought you were just gonna be like, saw the first one or something like that. So that's higher than I expected. Nice.
I've
Mine
wanted
would
to
be a
see Jason X, but I've never managed it.
oh, you've never seen Jason X?
No.
It's it's worth it. I'm gonna I'm gonna be one of the people who defends that movie. If you go into it with the right frame of mind that you're not taking this movie seriously, you're gonna have a great time.
Okay. That's how I enter these movies, so I'll be okay.
So some people don't enter these movies that way. We'll get to that on this one. So my level of fandom is a five that has a piece of the dock from the original Friday the 13th that I got from the camp where the movie was shot when they were tearing the dock down. I have a fun, quick little story about this. I called them up and was like, hey, can I get a piece of the dock? And they were like, yes, we're selling off pieces of stuff because we're tearing down the last of what was actually in the movie. So I was like, great. And they were like, we'll just drive it over because the movie, for anybody who doesn't know, even though, Crystal Lake obviously is a fictional place, the movies take place in New Jersey, which is where they were shot. So it's not far from me where those movies were shot. So without doxing myself, it's not real far. So that one of the guys who was running the camp was like, hey, I'll just drive it over your house. I'm like, awesome. We agreed on a price that was surprisingly affordable. But I honestly would have paid anything that he said to get it. So surprisingly affordable. I did this whole exchange in work, and I was telling one of my friends about it at the office I was working at the time, and he's like, "How big is the piece of dock?" And I had neglected to ask that. So for all I knew, this guy was going to drive up on a flatbed with like 20-foot boards. And I was going to somehow get into my apartment at that time. So I had to call up my now wife and kind of explain, like, wouldn't it be great if I could get a piece of the dock from the original Friday the 13th before they tore it down? She's like, yeah, that would be really cool. But what would that cost? I was like, what if I told you it only cost this? And she's like, that actually seems really reasonable. I'm like, great. I don't know what size it is. They're delivering it tonight. Bye. Hung up the phone and turned off my cell phone.
Smart move.
Yeah. So, but you guys can't see it here, but there's Jason masks up on the walls. Like Kelly has those really cool Star Wars masks behind him. There are Jason masks up on the walls. Tons of Jason toys. Friday the 13th isn't necessarily my favorite franchise, but aesthetically, Jason's probably my favorite villain of the major horror franchises. So I'm not going to show my whole collection because that would take forever. But here's another cool piece of it. This is a half Jason mask that was made by Tom Savini, the special effects artist, and he signed it, and everything's hand painted on there. So that's another fun one from my collection. But if you're a collector of Jason stuff, you haven't been able to get anything for a long, long time. And that's because of lawsuits. So Friday the 13th was created by a guy named Sean Cunningham, who's also a producer of Nightmare on Elm Street, the Freddy franchise. He made the movie, sold it to Paramount. Paramount hated having these movies, but begrudgingly pumped them out very quickly because money and corporations like money. I don't know if you guys ever heard that before. Companies like making money. So they pump these out until they stop making money. And Sean Cunningham had been trying for years to get a Freddy versus Jason movie made, but couldn't get the two different studios that own those properties together. So finally, when Paramount was done forever with Friday the 13th, he convinced New Line, who owned Freddy, to buy the Jason character, which is where the Jason trilogy comes in. If you watch those movies, that is Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, and Freddy versus Jason, after 20 years of trying to get that made. If you watch those movies, Jason's backstory is different and is in line with the Evil Dead franchise. And that's because they bought Jason the character, not Friday the 13th, the franchise. So you have everything else over at Paramount, Jason the character over at New Line with a new Evil Dead backstory, which continued as canon in comic books and spin-offs and things like that. As much as some people really, really hated that crossover. Then Michael Bay, the most respected producer of films in the world, stepped in and did a reboot 16 years ago, a remake 16 years ago that took the first four movies from the franchise and jammed them all into one movie that crossed over with, logically, his Transformers movie. That's not a joke. Jason is killing the bully characters from the Transformers movie, not just the actors, the characters from Transformers in the weirdest Jason crossover. Um, but now you have yet another company involved in that. While all this was happening, Victor Miller, who was hired to write the script by Sean Cunningham for the first one, decided that he owned some of the intellectual property related to this and should make more money off of it, which started a years and years and years long war between him and Sean Cunningham, which they ended up splitting rights to stuff. Victor Miller got the rights to the stuff he created, like certain characters and plot points, but Sean Cunningham owned everything else. So it was still, even once it was finally settled, it was still going to be extremely difficult for anybody to make a Friday the 13th movie because you'd have to align with one side or the other, and you're losing a bunch of story or Jason, the character, depending on which side you're going with. So another company stepped in, convinced them both to license everything they had to them, which doesn't include the Friday the 13th name because Paramount still owns that. It's all very confusing. But they've launched Jason Universe, which is tons of merchandise already immediately because there hasn't been any. They even pulled down the popular online game. So they're pumping out merchandise and tie-ins and different things like that. And finally, Jason on the small screen of your phones and computers with this short film. And I understand some people are upset that it's not a feature, that it's a short film, but I get it. It has been so long, 16 years, and that's just from the remake, is a long time. People don't have attention spans like that anymore. That means teenagers who could go and see R-rated movies now weren't even alive when the last proper original Jason movie came out because that was over 20 years ago. So I understand just trying to get something out quickly. But in order to do that, you need money. So they teamed up with the obvious Angry Orchard, the hard cider company, to produce a short film set in this Jason universe where everyone drinks Angry Orchard. And Angry Orchard, to tie in with it, released a Jason cider, blood orange cider. So that catches us up to speed. So now we're going to go through all of our categories. Kelly, what was your, before we get into that, what was your kind of overall impression of this?
Um, so we had talked a little bit prior to me watching it. Particularly, you were kind of outlining a little bit of the where people have some grumbles, and with the Angry Orchard playing a significant role in the financing of it, uh, it it secured a fair amount of product placement. And so I don't know whether I will have time to do this before we publish or not. But what I am going to try and do is, because it's only 15 minutes long, is uh, put together all of the times where Angry Orchard is actually on the screen and just kind of run all those. And then all the times that Jason is really on the screen And what you're going to find is while they will not be equal, they will be surprisingly closer than you might think in terms of amount of this 15-minute, actually 13-minute movie, because if you kind of carve the credits off, that they uh, they have screen time on it. So we'll see on that. I had originally just tried to do appearances, but that got a little bit tricky because if they're changing camera angles, is that a new appearance? If it's still kind of the same scene, but she's moved to a new location, I said, I might just cut anytime you're seeing Angry Orchard or Jason on there. And so hopefully those are kind of running in parallel for you at some point during this video so that you can see where it goes on. But um, this is not going to do as well as Milk and Cereal. I guess will be my thing on that as a second Panda review. But we'll go ahead and actually get started with that. Plot is our first plot slash writing is our first ranking. And so, Mike, if you want to start things off this round,
Sure.
I appreciate it.
So plot, I'm gonna go 3. So not quite as strong as Milk and Cereal. It delivers what you want as a fan. So a lot of people went into this with preconceived notions that it was basically going to be a 15-minute commercial for Angry Orchard. And while people exclusively only drink Angry Orchard in Jason Universe, it's actually not as egregious as some things I've seen. In fact, when this premiered later that night, my wife and I watched a movie after watching that, and both saying it wasn't as bad with the product placement as we expected. We were watching a random movie where a character does a full-on commercial for a car in the middle of it. Somebody's like, "Oh, did you get a new car?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's the blah 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 blah. Look at the four-wheel drive." And the rear view camera does like a full-on commercial read in the middle of a movie. It's not that bad. It's not people pointing Angry Orchards at the camera and talking about the nutritional facts of it or something like that. It's not that bad. But every character drinks Angry Orchard, only Angry Orchard. And the only character who doesn't drink Angry Orchard eats apples. So it's they do drive it home, but not as bad as they could have. So it doesn't feel like a commercial per se. There is one, and I guess I'll just get it out of the way now. There's one element to this. There's two elements to this, other than the Angry Orchard thing that people complain about. We'll get to the big one later, but there's a weird thing that happens, spoiler alert, in the middle of the movie, where one of the characters gets pulled underwater by Jason, then wakes up in the water hours later. This is not explained in the movie, but it's implied that they are now a zombie because you do see them, their face is sunken in, they take damage that a normal person couldn't survive fine and just shake it off. So it's implied that they're a zombie. That's fine because Jason himself is a zombie later in the series. So unlike a lot of slasher movies, the early Friday the 13th movies, while they're not the deepest films, have a pretty solid continuity. Like each one picks up right after the other one. In fact, most of two and then all of 3 and 4 take place over one weekend. So there's a pretty solid continuity when you watch them back to back, which you cannot say about most other slasher franchises. Um, at a certain point, though, they killed off Jason because, again, Paramount hated these movies. They killed off Jason, still wanted money. So they came up with the idea of a copycat killer, which was a neat idea. The idea of people, you know, going on these murder sprees inspired by Jason whenever they want to, get revenge on somebody, which plays into this. But they weren't a zombie when they did it. It was just a human. And that movie didn't really work though. Again, cool concept, but not the best movie. So they brought Jason back as a zombie. So zombie Jason is what most people have had since then and what most people think of as Jason. And the video game, the original NES video game, had zombies in it as well, like coming out of the lake and stuff. So this isn't unprecedented in this series, but there's no explanation for it. So are they insinuating that the lake brought her back to life? Because that's not how Jason gets brought back as a zombie in the movies. So that's how some people are taking it. Or are they saying that just this drive for revenge, which ties into the title, and again, the overall premise, is the first movie, again, spoiler alert for like a 45-year-old movie. The killer is actually Jason's mom out for revenge because they want to reopen the camp where he almost died. Friday 13th 2, Jason is avenging his mom, which carries over through the next ones. The fifth movie with the copycat killer is somebody avenging their child's death. So revenge is a big part of it. So is it revenge that brings people back as zombies? Or is it the lake? That is not clear. So that's why I only give it a 3. But otherwise, it delivers what you want: stupid, one dimensional characters that Jason can kill.
Yeah, so first of all, clarification. Mike describing people who are copycats of serial killers as a neat idea is Mike's opinion. Does
You're going to
not
distance
reflect
yourself
does
from
not
certain.
reflect my opinion. I don't view serial killer copycats as a neat idea, but you do you, Mike. So there we go. I'm actually going to go two for plot and writing because largely what you're talking about, which is it created a level of confusion in me that was surprising for 15 minutes of viewing that because I couldn't, and I'm fine with them leaving it open-ended or whatever in terms of, well, maybe it's not, but it's just they seem to kind of waver between, yeah, we want to make sure she's now different or not, and then there's just inconsistencies in how she behaves, and she's upset that her boyfriend's uh, cheating on her and stuff like that. That if she is truly now Team Zombie, I think she'd be less concerned. I also think you emote less if you're a zombie. I've never been a zombie. I don't even think it'd be a neat idea to be a zombie, but they tend to be more emotion. They don't emote. She emoted. Uh, the makeup, maybe this will come a little bit individual. So post, yeah. So into the lake. Don't really know what happens. Sometime later, she comes out of the lake with pre-emergent Alice Cooper makeup, kind of dark circles around her eyes. And it's like, did he punch her? Did he beat her up? And because she was really exhibiting no other zombie-like characteristics at that point. But if it was like, oh, you're not really supposed to know, well, then don't give her Alice Cooper eyes, And it just, I was like, couldn't get it. And then, and so by the way, spoilers for this whole movie. At the very end, because it is Sweet Revenge, the young lady who was uh, two-timing with her boyfriend, she saves her from Jason to then kill her and then reunites. I assume they're going in for a hug. Couldn't tell for sure, but it just, again, another to me, not zombie-like response to that. So I felt there were parts of that that I was like, I can't, I get maybe where you were going, but I'm not sure. And just that ongoing confusion for me through there is just, I'm fine with being surprised and unexpected things happening. I'm not as thrilled with, well, that doesn't seem to make any sense at all. I'm trying to reconcile this part and that part, and they just don't work. So that's my long-winded uh, response to plot and writing. We'll go to the acting. I'm sure some Academy Awards are lining up for these folks, and so your rating on that.
So I don't think the acting is spectacular in this, but I think it's exactly what it needs to be, if that makes sense. Like you they're people to get killed by Jason. So I mean they're it's not distractingly bad. The dialogue isn't so cringy that it pulls you out of it or anything like that. Their acting is fine, but you're here to see Jason kill people in the woods. So they delivered exactly what they were supposed to deliver, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give it a 3 as well. There's nothing exciting going on there as far as the acting goes. It's not bad. It's not spectacular. They inhabit people for Jason to kill, which is all they needed to do.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with that too. I'm gonna go with a three for acting. Um, I the only the hesitancy I have on kind of staying firm on that three, but I will stay with it, is that um, the and this is maybe more of a casting concern than acting concern, but you have two feels to me like 23-year-old attractive young ladies and the bone that those dogs are excited about is a 45-year-old guy in a man bun. And um I found that a little hard. But in terms of performance, especially as the elderly, I'm good to see the elderly are able to act still. But all the performances were, I mean, nobody was overly hammy or took you out of it in terms of how they executed on any of that. I think any confusion by am I a zombie or not a zombie and doing this was certainly not the actress's fault. She was just doing what she was told on those. So I think, she executed a confusing arc of character well. So I'm certainly comfortable giving them a three for acting. Uh, Now, Mike's favorite subject, score, music. Uh, where are you at on that?
So I'm gonna shoot a little higher on this one and give it a 4. So it starts without the iconic Friday the 13th score, which isn't just the vocalizations from Harry Manfredini, but there is these sort of violin stabs and string arrangement that it's known for that all of the movies tend to work in at some point in some form. This doesn't do that until near the end, and I actually really appreciated that. It made it not necessarily feel, especially because, and we'll get more into this with visuals, there is a slight visual difference to this one. I liked that it kind of felt like they were doing their own thing, and then once Jason was fully on screen and killing people, you got a score that was more in line with what you're familiar to. And I felt like the transition between them was pretty good. So I'm going 4 for the music.
This was a tough one for me. Because my going in, there's nothing wrong with the music and the score. I think well aligned to this show, this movie. Um, what I was originally going is like, just because you introduce into the score shouldn't immediately, as awesome as that is, shouldn't immediately make me jump to a four. I said, I'm not gonna, that alone should not let me do it. But then I realized Alice Cooper's Man Behind the Mask introduces and I love that song. So I think that I was being overly critical. Obviously, it's a very identifiable thing, and they certainly incorporate. It didn't feel like insert, here just because we need to. Um, so uh, so I'll go four as well. Like I said it's a shaky four, but it's a four nonetheless. Now for Mike just mentioned it, kind of a broad category of special effects, visuals, cinematography. So just the eye candy aspect of the film. Where you at on that?
So I'm going to go with all the positives first. It's well shot. I like the framing of everything. There's nothing crazy going on. But again, the Friday 13th movies were always kind of meat and potatoes kind of thing, the way that they were shot. Is why they don't get the praise of, say, a Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that. They weren't the most creative movies. And the storyline was a little more bare bones than a lot of those other ones. So I get that. So for what it is, I thought it was fine. It also has a very fall color palette, which is one of the things there's been so in that this long lull between movies, there's been a lot of fan films that have come out that have delivered something that fans have been asking for a long time, which is Jason not during the summer. So, because the early movies all take place in a short period of time, they all kind of take place around the summer. This has a very fall look to it. In fact, the color grading that they use in the edit makes it look like one of those fall Hallmark movies or something like that in the beginning. And I actually really like that. I thought that was a good choice. The closest thing in horror that I would compare it to would be Halloween 4, which has become recently like a big Gen Z thing because people are realizing that that's the most fall looking of the Halloween movies. I like the Halloween movies, but they're all shot in California during the summer, and throwing a couple of leaves on the ground doesn't make palm trees look like you're in the Midwest. So it's really one of the standout problems with the Halloween movies. So Halloween 4 was actually shot in fall in the Midwest and looks it and has a certain feel to it. This feels like fall. So even though we're back at Crystal Lake again, it's got a nice fall feel to it. It has an interesting color grading to it. It's well enough shot for what it is. Again, they're not known for like crazy visuals. We're going to get to the negatives now. So the biggest problem everybody has with it is Jason, particularly Jason's mask. So I mentioned I have a bunch of Jason masks, so I'm pretty familiar with how it looks. The problem is Jason wasn't really supposed to have a mask. So if you watch the movies, you see a dream sequence in the first one of him as a kid. In two, he just wears a sack over his head. In the third movie, Jason steals a hockey mask off of one of his victims. It's into the movie. It's not even in the opening scene or anything like that. It wasn't meant to be a thing. It was gonna, be Jason's trademark. So it was just a generic hockey mask. They've tried different things with the mask over the years, and there's stuff people like and stuff they don't like, but it's not really like something that they could trademark, if that makes sense, because it's just hockey mask. Which is why every Halloween you see a million hockey killer masks and things like that they don't get paid for because they're not Jason masks. So they hired Greg Nicotero, who should know better, to come in and do a design for the Jason mask that was unique enough that they could really trademark that and make it the Jason mask. So what he came up with is terrible. It is a weirdly shaped mask with square, extra large eye holes, to protect your eyes from a hockey puck, and 13 air holes that are weirdly arranged. I get it on one hand from a business perspective that it has to be unique enough for them to trademark it and be like, this is Jason's mask, not just a hockey mask. But they do it in such a weird way, and the chevrons are gigantic and take up like half the mask. It's just weird. I recently went to Universal. They had a Jason Universe attraction there because again, everything Jason Universe now, and they had Jason at different points throughout the franchise jumping out at you, but all with the new design mask. So I've seen it a lot, not just in this short, but yeah, it also the overall aesthetic. So if you saw Greg Nicotero's sketches, which you can find online, his design for it, this is the Greg Nicotero, like of K and BFX, who is the showrunner for Walking Dead and stuff like that. His sketch of it, first off, isn't that different from regular Jason, other than these like weird choices, including ill-fitting clothing, which they carried over. In fact, there's a long shot of Jason, the shot that Kelly mentioned, where they're kind of staring each other down after she kills her friend. Um, there's this long shot of him that is exactly Greg Nicotero's design sketch. And I think it was meant to make you like, oh my God, it's so cool. It's the sketch. But it just really illustrates how dumb it is because the ill-fitting clothing makes the actor look small, like he's like a kid or something, or some weird, awkward guy. That is a 6'5" stuntman in there, and you would not know that until he is standing next to the other characters and towers over them because the ill-fitting clothing and the weird design of the overly large mask, it actually makes him look smaller, which does the opposite effect of making Jason look intimidating. So it's a real mixed bag on visuals for me. So because of that, I think I'm going to go 2.5. I'm going to go right down the middle.
We don't do half panda. Now I've got to create a new graphic. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
It's just when you're weak, you can't land on a decision, you do zero point 0.5. So interesting. So I was torn. Yeah. So it's interesting. You talk about the concern about how Jason looked, not as intimidating based on the ill-fitting clothes. If you go to the YouTube comments, which is always, if you're looking for just kind of positive vibes, just a wonderful place to go through.
Uplifting,
Yeah. If you just need a little bounce in your
constructive.
step, hit those YouTube comments because you'll get it's just a joyous occasion. Lots and lots of complaints around on, and you know, I don't know who was the first one to come with like, well, that's the best commercial I've seen anywhere. But that line repeats. That's the best 15 commercial I've seen. Again and again and again. And I'm sure everyone posting it thought they were brilliant and they were coming up with this thing, but you're wrong. 18 other people before you said the same thing. And so there was that. And then there was just a ton of stuff about, well, Jason wasn't buff enough. Jason's a big guy. This guy's not a big guy. And I think when you get a chance to kind of compare them, in the scenes where you can do that, he does tower over the other. I mean, the female leads are not WNBA players that are taking a
Sure.
break. They're not towering, but still, they went through. But that last shot does really kind of reinforce it. Doesn't seem to be very big. So those complaints are there. They're in the YouTube comments. It, I think you talked about the color palette and the kind of colorization of it, um, the kind of blocking and the way that the things are set up. I think I thought overall, I mean, it kind of harkened back to the Jason movies, had a little help carry some of that vibe to it. Um, it I think it was some unfortunate choices on ill-fitting clothes. I am surprised that Greg Nicotero didn't come up with something more original and gruesome, because he manages to do on Walking Dead with some great regularity. But we'll just kind of go on that. So because I tend to adhere to the previously established rules for how we rate movies, I'm going to give it a 3, which would have been Mike's score if he had rounded up his wimpy little score that I had to create a new graphic for. We're gonna have to do one for all of these. So, are you gonna stay this week? It's just terrible.
When do we
Um,
get to the next movie? And I'm like, 1/8.
1.18 pi. You know, um, so it'll be great. So I'll just edit your scores out. Just but I'll go 3. I'll go 3 on that. So do that. So finally, quote. So this would be each of us picking a quote from the movie, like "Buy Angry Orchard" or any other quote you want to, and then applying, hopefully in round numbers, a Panda score to it. So, Mike, do you have a quote, or would you like me to share my quote first?
I'll let you go first, sir, since there's so
Okay.
much controversy over my half panda.
There's really no controversy at all. There's just disappointment. Um, so, uh, as Mike mentioned, most of the characters drink Angry Orchard. One character eats apples in a very aggressive way, a very aggressive way. He's the most aggressive apple eater I think I've ever seen. And he's an older gentleman and intended to be, is he the murderer kind of thing going on? To agree like you do in these movies. Um, so somewhere in there, he kind of mentions, yeah, there were murders. And the actress goes, there have been murders here? And he looks at her and he goes, lots of murders. So lots of murders is my favorite quote. I really of this whole movie. That was the my special moment in the movie. So I'm going to give lots of murders a 4 or a 3.75. No, I'll go with 4. So we'll do that. I was disappointed before you give your quote that I miss when we used to always live watch movies together. And we would be able to kind of, particularly these are the perfect movies to watch because you can kind of sit back and throw out kind of clever lines or what you think are clever lines throughout it. And so when the guy gets his head chopped off by the boat motor, you know, I was gonna, had I been on X or Twitter or any other kind of device where we were co-watching, I would have
Truth
tweeted
Social.
True Social. I would have shared the following truth. Well, that was kind of stern, which I thought would have been pretty good. And then when
Nice.
Jason's trying to jam the Apple Core or Apple Core through the one of the other female leads, I would have been, and that's the importance of having a strong core. I would have kind of thrown that out as well, but I just didn't get. And then there was the typical kind of knife in the head where it's the I have a splitting headache. That's a gimme. Everybody uses that. Totally not good at that. But I thought that was kind of stern would be good, but I couldn't do any of that. I could say them and laugh and enjoy it myself, but I just had to offer up. That's what I would have done if the world was different. And none of my friends run True Social, so I can't do. There's not a lot of live watches of bad science fiction movies on True Social, as far as I can tell.
Not so far, you mean.
That's right. It's a new vista. All right. So, do you have a quote or half of a quote or
First
maybe?
off, I'm going to throw out we should do a live watch and truth it or whatever it is on there. That would be amazing. And how spectacular would it be if Trump chimed in with whatever we were watching?
Overrated movie. Actors are terrible. I wanted a cameo. They didn't give me a cameo.
But I'm actually going to go with, and I don't know if, it might not be as memorable, but it plays into the whole kind of overall Friday the 13th theme. The one thing I was curious how they would approach because times have changed since we've had a Friday the 13th movie. Again, it's been over 20 years since there was an original Jason movie. Those movies frequently feature scantily clad women and leering gentlemen or not so gentlemen in them. And I was wondering how that would be approached, not just today, but on YouTube, where most people are watching this. There was screenings of it, including a premiere at Angry Orchard. Surprise! Um, but most people are watching this on YouTube. So I was wondering how they were going to deal with that, or if it was just going to be excised altogether. They can get away with the violence because you can just age gate it, and it was already paid for by Angry Orchard, so they don't need to worry about monetization necessarily. This is just to get something out there to get the Jason universe banner chugging. Um, so I was wondering how they would handle this, and they have the same old man that you mentioned, or older gentleman, watching one of the girls, the main protagonist, who becomes a zombie, maybe somehow, um, before she becomes zombified, or doesn't, maybe from the lake or not. Uh, Watching her sitting on the dock in her bikini, and then when she covers up to get in the boat, he just says "show's over." So I thought that was a nice little kind of acknowledgement of the creepy lecherous men angle that we've seen in all of the movies. So I felt like that was as a fan, a fun nod to that, since they can't really show you anything like that in this. And I'll give that 3.97. No, I will give that 4 pandas.
Okay. All right. Well, let me summarize our scores in three, two, one. So our final scores are 16 and a half pandas from Mike and 16 for me. So uh, that's where we'll kind of land on Sweet Revenge. So that's fun. Yeah, we need to find out a way to either live truth or something. So
I would I would love to do that.
just don't necessarily think um I could just see ice breaking our doors down before we're done. It's because clearly we're trouble. at that point in time.
If you
So,
truth something like this would be better with a Bad Bunny song right now, you're guaranteeing it.
yes, that's true. Yep, fair enough. Cool. Well, hey, if you will work to continue to explain the rules to Mike how Panda reviews are supposed to work. If you are interested in us doing another movie, let him try again and apply and find out what else he thinks is neat. Maybe cannibalism next time. We'll have to see. But let us know in the comments. Appreciate if you'd subscribe to the Bug Panda YouTube channel. Come back and see us again. You can catch Hard No daily. It's the world's shortest podcast. Every episode under a minute. No half episodes. Anything else, sir?
No, I think that's about it. Overall, I would say I really liked this short. It's not as good as Milk and Cereal was, but overall, I really liked it because at the end of the day, the kills were really fun, and that's what you're watching this for. We're nitpicking all the different things to get a proper review of it, but for something like this, you just want to watch Jason kill people, and this delivers that. So if that's what you want, and a refreshing angry orchard, this is something you should check out.
Yeah,
Plus, it's free on YouTube.
yeah, and he's creative, as we want Jason to be. So there's it's the first outboard motor uh, related death that I can think of where it's wielded as a weapon, but could be wrong on that. But it was a good one anyway. One of the better motorboat attacks. Thought it was neat. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Kelly just said he likes motorboating videos. Have a good night, everybody.
Bog Panda.